What is the point of accepting foreign companies into your country to explore the resources if it will not benefit the country? The fact is, there is no point. It's far better that the resources remain untouched than for these companies to come in, explore, gain huge profits, pollute the environment, and displace local people from their homes while giving the government a measly sum as compensation. The newly elected President of Senegal understands this, and that is why during his presidential campaign, he pledged to renegotiate mining and fishing contracts with these Western companies. And, now that he won the election, becoming the youngest elected president in the world, the president has taken steps to put the plan of renegotiating the mining contract in motion. After his inauguration on April 2nd, President Faye announced that his administration intends to conduct an audit of the oil, gas, and mining sectors. The exploitation of our natural resources, which according to the Constitution belong to the people, will receive particular attention from my government, he said. I will proceed with the disclosure of the effective ownership of extractive companies and with an audit of the mining, oil, and gas sector, he added. The president also reassured investors that they were welcome in Senegal. Investor rights will always be protected, as well as the interests of the state and the people, he added. From this statement, you can see that the president is fair. He said investors' rights would be protected, but the interest of the state and the Senegalese people would also be protected. Unfortunately, most of the mining contracts signed between African countries and Western companies usually prioritize the rights of investors over the interests of the people, which ought not to be so because, in truth, the resources belong to the people and not the investors. In line with his plan for the mining sector, President Faye appointed a new Minister of Energy and Mines, Ibrahima Diop. In some of his first remarks as the newly appointed Energy and Mines Minister, Ibrahima Diop said closer scrutiny of the sectors was high on the agenda for Senegal, which is why it is necessary because Senegal is due to start oil and gas production this year after much delay. According to the IMF projection for Senegal's economic growth, upcoming oil and gas production will boost economic growth to double digits by 2025. Senegal's state-owned company Petrosen has also forecasted that the combined revenue from the two main deposits of oil and gas in the country is estimated at an annual average of $1.1 billion every year for the next 30 years. This is why the new administration wants to make sure that Senegal gets the very best from its mining sector, which it believes that the contracts signed by those previously in power are very unfavorable to Senegal. However, this claim was always dismissed by the former administration under Macky Sall and experts under his government. According to Senegal's Energy and Mines Minister, the scrutiny of the mining sector will involve publishing the contracts, carrying out a mining audit, working in the interests of the people, and, if necessary, renegotiating all existing contracts. Companies involved in the audit include BP and US-listed Cosmo Energy, which are leading the development of Greater Tortue Ahmeyim, Senegal's first LNG project, and Australia's Woodside Energy, just to name a few. Australia's Woodside Energy holds 82% of Senegal's offshore Sangomar oil and gas field, which is expected to start oil production in mid-2024. Energy Minister Diop made it clear that Senegal will strive to promote resources to our partners in a way that is strictly in line with the interests of the Senegalese public. However, since the news came out that Senegal intends to audit the mining companies, which means that the government is serious about renegotiating contracts, Senegal's mining industry has gone into an uproar with these Western companies, and even former President Macky Sall, who should be deemed a traitor, raising concerns about the possibility and the risk of renegotiating these contracts. One of the first companies to raise concerns is the Australian Woodside Energy Company, which operates in the Sangomar oil field in central western Senegal in association with Petrosen, Senegal's national oil company. According to a spokesperson for the company, Christine Forster, Woodside Energy respects the right of governments to determine the legal and regulatory frameworks that govern oil and gas development. However, she added, "Our experience has shown that the most successful jurisdictions have been those that work in partnership with industry, respect contract sanctity, and create investment certainty." In other words, Woodside Energy believes that the only way for Senegal's oil and gas industry to be successful under Faye's administration is for the government to behave like the previous administration and leave the existing contracts which benefits the company more than the country. And the reason why they have to do this is that Senegal needs to maintain investors' certainty. In some ways, this statement from Woodside Energy is like a veiled threat meant to bully the government of Senegal into submission. But we will come to this later. In an interview with Bloomberg on March 19th, Senegal's former president Macky Sall said the contracts can always be improved. But frankly, thinking that we can change the contracts already signed with the companies is not possible. That would be a disastrous turn for Senegal. Can you imagine this? Of course we can, after all. Macky Sall is one of those African presidents who does not care about the interest of the people, but looks the other way for the West to do as they like, as long as his personal interest is protected. How exactly can renegotiating the mining contracts to the benefit of the people of Senegal be disastrous to Senegal? Isn't the resources for the benefit of the people, or is it for those Western companies? It's no wonder that during Macky Sall's time as president, his so-called infrastructure-focused strategy failed to create enough jobs and alleviate Senegal's rising cost of living, leaving the problem of high levels of unemployment and rising cost of living for President Faye to deal with. What a farce of a leader. The former communications manager of Petrosen, oil expert Ibrahima Bakary, has also raised concerns about the risk of renegotiating mining contracts. According to him, explicit renegotiation clauses do not exist in oil contracts, but clauses that regulate potential disputes which restrict the possibilities for renegotiation. He cited the example of the Greater Tortue Ahmeyim, GTA, liquefied natural gas field shared by Senegal and Mauritania on their maritime border and is jointly developed by British energy giant BP, the American company Kosmos Energy, the Mauritanian hydrocarbons company SMH, and Petrosen. According to reports, production at the gas field, on which the two neighbors are pinning their hopes for development, is scheduled to begin later this year. In this case, the Mauritanian side will inevitably have to be taken into account, Drame said. He further added that a renegotiation of contracts would be a risky business, and the reputation of Senegal around the world of investment could put off potential suitors. However, for some less advanced fields, such as the Yakaar-Teranga gas field located in Senegal, the renegotiation is simpler because it is in the development phase, and there have not been any major investments yet. Despite all these concerns about how risky renegotiating the contracts is, the fact is that Senegal is moving in the right direction by planning to renegotiate mining contracts. International economist and industrial development expert Demba Theum, who has no affiliation with Senegal's oil and gas industry and has looked at the situation objectively, confirmed that Senegal has the right to renegotiate contracts and it is not in any way risky. According to Demba, most mining or PPP or hydrocarbon contracts are renegotiated in the world. He cited an example of the Latin American Caribbean zone, where, according to him, 40 to 92% of contracts are renegotiated over a period ranging from 1 to 8 years after they are signed. Demba then said something interesting. He said, "We are brandishing the specter of risk, saying that the country that does it won't be considered safe, and that's going to scare investors away. It is a form of political and moral blackmail on underdeveloped countries." In Senegal, the constitution declares that natural resources belong to the people and must benefit them. Did you hear that? All around the world, countries renegotiate contracts regardless of the so-called clause embedded in the contract. It's normal. But now that Senegal wants to renegotiate the contract, the company and those affiliated with it are talking about the risk of driving investors away. But is there truly a risk? African countries are the ones with resources, and regardless of how these companies behave, they are making so much money from it. The only thing that would make a Western company or investor leave Africa is insecurity, and not because of renegotiating contracts. There is absolutely nothing risky about renegotiating the contracts. As Demba said, all these talks of risk are just a ploy to blackmail Senegal to do what they want. It's not just the company involved, it's also political, meaning that Western countries are involved. It would not be surprising to hear that both President Macky Sall and oil expert Ibrahima Bakary have been paid by the company to say that renegotiating the contracts is risky, so that the minds of the public and the government can be turned toward their cause. Papa Demba also mentioned that since 2021, the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine have created a precarious situation, meaning that all the conditions are in place to justify renegotiating these contracts. This is in reference to Diop, who said that explicit renegotiation clauses do not exist in oil contracts. Since African independence and Western companies started coming to exploit African resources, the situation has always been like this. The company gets more benefits and enjoys tax holidays while the country gets little from it. And the clause that has hindered African countries from getting what they deserve is the fear that it may drive investors away. But the question is, what is the point of attracting investors to exploit what belongs to the country if it won't benefit the country? As we earlier stated, there is absolutely no point. African countries should learn to stand their ground and demand what belongs to them from these mining contracts and see if investors will be driven. The truth is they will not, because they need our resources. So, President Faye should not be concerned or blackmailed into accepting the contract. He should stand his ground and demand benefits that are in the interest of his people. However, the issue of negotiating and renegotiating mining contracts with Western companies brings a pertinent question to mind. Why do African countries need Western companies to mine their resources? Can't African countries do it themselves? Is it that Africa does not have the technical skills necessary to mine these resources? Or is it that Africa does not have the finances? And if it's about finances, what about the money they have been borrowing from the IMF and World Bank? Can't it be used to mine these resources? These are questions that need to be answered. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video.